Welcome to Interviews. I'm Ernie Manouse. With me today is actor, Broadway star, television star, movie star, Jeremy Jordan. Hello there, Jeremy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to talk to a Texan, but a Texan in New York, I guess.
A Texan in New Jersey, all right? Uh yeah, I'm just excited to come down to Houston. I'm coming down for a show.
We're going to have you here doing the Theater Under the Stars Gala, which is going to be on November
Mhm.
7th. And I was going to come to this later, but since you bring it up, I'll start right here and ask,
All right.
going out on stage as you, as opposed to going out
Uh,
on stage as a character, harder, easier, a different thought process?
it used to be a lot harder because I was, not as comfortable in my own skin. And when you go out as a character, you've rehearsed for hours, weeks, months, and you're saying somebody else's words. There's none of like usually, not always, but there's not a lot on the line in terms of like your ego and your own sort of stuff that you're dealing with. And as soon as you walk on the stage as yourself, you sort of bring it all with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so any insecurities you might have, any criticism that you could potentially get, it's all on you and nobody else. And that used to scare me a lot. But then I started doing concerts more and more and got more confident and better at sort of separating those things and making sure that I, know that I feel very comfortable with the audience and it's a different kind of persona too, it's a
Yeah.
it's a more charismatic version of myself um than in real life, which in real life I'd just be like hiding behind a pole.
Yeah.
If I'm in the audience of the show, I'm like, don't look at me, don't call on me, don't bring me up on stage.
Okay, if that is truly you, why this line of work?
Well, interestingly, I have a talent for it. So I have to sort of accept that.
Yeah.
And be like, because I was so insecure with myself, it initially the escapism of going into another character and being somebody else and getting to explore other lives um, was really intriguing to me because I sort of had an excuse to do that. And I had to do it in front of people, but since I was like not terrible at it, it was okay. And then I got praise in like a new kind of way that I wouldn't have gotten as just me. So in
Yeah.
fact, it probably slipped me a little farther away from myself at the beginning, and then I had to kind of find my way back.
Back to the concert for a moment, when you're looking at the material you're going to perform, how much of it
Hmm.
comes from a connection to the material because it speaks to you in some way, and how much is you got to think they want to hear the hits, they want to hear the songs from the shows that made you the name you are? Where's the balance in that?
Well, I do think that most of the hits check both of those boxes. There's a reason that they become so popular. It's because they spoke to, the human condition or something that I've really connected with, and that connection sort of has been, transmitted to the audience. And so I think those songs do check those boxes. And then there are always a couple songs that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise sung, except the audience demands it. But then we try to sprinkle in some things that are either meaningful to me or interesting or new or tell a very specific story. It always changes, depends on the venue, depends on the audience,
Yeah.
depends on where I am in my career.
Do we get a few more Disney songs in here now because of your little partner in life, your child, or do you stick to where you were
I
going?
have been doing a lot of Disney songs in the set. I was doing for a long time. I was doing like a full Disney princess medley thing.
Yeah.
Um, I definitely will be doing Disney. I'm not 100% sure which. We have a few options to choose from, but there
Yeah.
will definitely be some Disney. And obviously, Newsies, which is like my biggest theater thing, is from Disney too. So yeah, we'll definitely see some of that.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, Bonnie and Clyde and Newsies kind of play back and forth at that period in your life, going back and forth.
Yeah.
Do you find similarities in the character of Jack to Clyde? No. Does that make it easier in a period like that, or is it harder if you've got characters that have similarities?
There were definitely similarities. They were both very charismatic. They were both sort of like kind of bad boys that went against, the grain, and whether it's against the law or against the man.
Hmm.
They definitely had a rebellious streak to them, which is so funny because I'm not that way. I'm such a like, I don't want to cause any trouble. I'll speak up when I need to, but yeah, there were definitely some similarities. They both wore a little news cap at one point. But no, they were also very different. I mean, their accents were different. They were come from different, completely different times and different, economic places. Although they were both poor, so yeah, it definitely helps when you're kind of straddling two characters at the same time to find those similarities. But at the same time, I think it helps to really focus on the differences as well. That way, you're not blending them together on
Right.
accident.
Well, that's what I would worry about, that you would find the similarities in them. And because you're going, and it's not like one day you do this one, the next day you did that one, but that period of time you were developing these characters too, kind of bringing them to the stage, which is more, I would think, than simply being cast in a very firmly established role.
Yeah, and I think with anything, you're going to bring a part of yourself into these characters anyway, intrinsically. And so finding the places where they sort of defer and go away from you is really important. But at the same time, you have to learn to embrace that you bring a very specific thing to the table, and that it's okay to lean into the things that make you special as an artist or make you sort of unique as a human and as an actor or performer.
Yeah.
And I've kind of learned that over the years, not to shy away from those things, but to sort of embrace them. I think at the beginning, when I first started, I was like, I have to be, an empty vessel for the character. And every time I did that, I sort of it sort of came out as blah, as like nothing. There was no meat to it. It was just like, here's my interpretation. And as soon as I started realizing, oh, I have very specific things that I can bring to the table, and I can sort of infuse these characters with that, and then diverge from
Hmm.
there, that became a big sort of light bulb moment for me, and have sort of led me to where I am now.
Do you find that when you're being cast today, that they're casting you because they have a concept of who you are, a preconceived notion of who Jeremy Jordan is, and that you either have to fight against that to get what you want, or is it falling in line with the direction you want to go?
Both. And two very specific examples. Recently, Gatsby on Broadway, which I did a couple of years ago, um, was very much in line with the conception of what I bring to the table, which is like this charming sort of like guy that has it all, and which is a version of me, even though it's not exactly authentic. But that's what a lot of people see and think of. And then I sort of had to fight to convince parties that I was the right person to play Floyd Collins, because he's more, hard scrabble, down on your luck, country boy. He might have some charisma to him, but he's quieter, he's simpler. And so yeah, I had to really work hard, and I went in more than once to audition for it, and until I finally booked that.
Yeah.
So I think it can be good to like have a perception of you, but I do think that you should still continue to sort of fight for the things that you can do that maybe people don't think of you initially
Yeah.
for.
Floyd Collins, I've seen you talk about this, heard you talk about it, that the emotional toll of that character and how you would come down after playing the character. It makes you start to think about, be it the stage actor, the performer, more than them just coming out saying lines and going home. That there really is in some way a transformation that happens to you to get to be that character on stage. If am I over analyzing it, or is there something to that?
No, I don't think you're overanalyzing it. I think there are certain characters and certain roles and certain shows that if they don't demand it, they sort of if they pull it out of you regardless. It's like the show demands a sacrifice in a kind of a way, and that's the only way that it's gonna work.
Hmm.
Floyd Collins is like a very specific show that you have to give in to certain aspects of it in order for it to work. Otherwise, it could feel hokey or it could feel disjointed and confusing and sort of like, what is this? And until I sort of learned that I have to just sort of 100% go all in, that was never going to happen. So what was helpful is that I never left the stage, and so I'm sitting there and being forced to live this man's experience, albeit over the course of 2.5 hours, as opposed to 2 weeks is how long he was stuck down there.
Hmm.
Um, and then what's beautiful about the show is that he changes and begins to like sort of have this existential realization and sort of becomes one with the world and one with the earth and can somehow sort of still feel his family and feel the world above and feel everything as one and you can't help but sort of be sucked and drawn into that and he just asks a lot of questions that I think are really interesting and really important. And when you're forced to sit there and you don't have anybody to play with, you're just looking straight out into the audience and into nothing, essentially, because it's dark. You're sort of forced to sit there and be with yourself and consider all of these things.
Is the Jeremy Jordan before Floyd Collins and the Jeremy Jordan after Floyd Collins a different person in some ways?
Nah.
Nah.
No,
Yes.
I think I'm the same person. I've always been a pretty sort of uh, I think that was one of the main things that connected me with Floyd is that I always am a question asker. I don't just sort of accept beliefs or accept circumstances. I tend to always consider like, oh, what else is there? What other sort of way into this can there be, or way out of this thing can there be? The one thing that I do feel sort of changed me was other people's experience of the show. People coming up to me afterwards and saying, whether or not they had experiences where they were trapped, whether metaphorically or literally, in their lives, and how healing it was and how sort of seen they felt.
Hmm.
And that's always the most sort of rewarding parts of these journeys is connecting with people that you would have never otherwise thought. And people were telling me stories that I would have never thought had anything to do um, with the circumstances of the show, but it's what brought it up in them. And I think that's what really great theater does is it lets you put your own life into these characters, into these circumstances, and imagine how you would have sort of gotten through it. And when it ends in as beautiful of a way as Floyd Collins does, it can be very cathartic and very healing.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit. You take me here about the importance of art when it comes to education and evolution and who we are as a people and a community, how you see that in today's day and age.
I think the main takeaway from art, at least in my field, is empathy. And I think that is a massive thing that we're sort of struggling with as a people
Hmm.
and communities and our countries and in every sort of aspect of life. It's so easy to become selfish and self-centered, and because we're so connected with everybody with the internet and social media, and it's all instant. We're not forced to sit and really think about what it's like to be other people. And when you're forced to sit in the theater or in a concert or in some kind of performance where you don't have your phone and you don't have any of those other distractions, and you're forced to sit there and live an experience that is not your own, the main result, and I think the most beneficial result, is empathy and sort of understanding the human condition. And that for me is by far the most intriguing thing about the arts, and learning about the arts and being a part of the arts, and seeing and supporting it. I think it's sort of bringing the human condition to light. And it's always in some kind of interesting or healing way or thoughtful way. It's not just, clickbait or doom scrolling or, politicians jarring at one another. It's meant to be felt and meant to have meaning and meant to um, sort of urge you to have opinions and change your point of view. And that's, I think, really vital to our society.
Yeah. Did you always feel this way?
No. I like to make people laugh,
Yeah.
and it felt good to feel like I had something to give to the world, and that's still the case. But I think as I've gotten older, it's become more clear to me the actual deeper meaning behind that, behind connecting, behind making people laugh, behind entertaining them and allowing them to escape into another world. Um, I think I sort of was drawn to the surface level of that without really knowing what the substance was beneath all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think I started that way. It was fun, and I got to pretend and play make believe for a living, and people thought I was good at it. And when you're younger, I think that's enough. You want to just sort of find your lane and go. Um, but no, I wasn't as eloquent about, the impact of the arts when I was starting out.
Yeah. If we look back, and I mean no disrespect bringing this up, but I know it was a difficult period when you were younger that then led you from
Mhm.
athletics into music, but then from
Yeah.
music into acting. I'm curious, as each of these shifts, how Jeremy Jordan shifted and changed as you recognize these new talents, these new identities.
I was really shy when I first started out, and then I kind of went into team sports and areas where I could be a part of a team and part of something else that I didn't have to like be my I didn't have to be at the forefront. And then I realized, and then I got into an accident. I had to stop doing sports, and I always knew that I could sing, and so I joined the choir, and I started doing that. And people were like, "Oh, you should do the solos." I was like, "I don't know if I want to do the solos," but then they kept pushing me, and then I kept doing it, and then eventually I did some theater, and I realized that pretending sort of allowed me to get out of my shell and also allowed me to be somebody else because I was never super comfortable with being myself in the first place. And yeah, I think at every sort of step, I knew it was the right path to take, but it was scary, and I often got in my own way because I was nervous or scared or trying to be something that I wasn't, until I've sort of led me to you know, doing concerts and being able to walk on stage and be me, even if it's like a weird alter ego version of that.
Early on, one of your roles was as the mute in the Fantastics. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean that I played I did a Fantasticks a musical, and they decided to cast older, and I was still in high school, and they're like, "Well, you can play the mute. He's a fun character." I was like, I sing." So but I didn't have anything else to do, so I said, okay. And then basically what happened was that I used to, when I did shows on stage, I'd go out and I'd sing and I'd make faces and I'd sort of produce a facsimile of human emotion. But I don't think I was really feeling those things. I think I was just doing line readings and making facial expressions that I thought made sense. It was like a weird sort of psychopathic way of performing. But when I had to be the mute, I kind of was forced to, I didn't have any tools except to listen. And when I started listening, that's when sort of reaction happened. And then I became invested in other people and started reacting and exploring different ways of sort of interacting with the world around me, as opposed to just like, here's a choice that I made up in my bedroom, the day before. It was just a different level. And then I was like, oh, I think I actually might have a knack for acting. Oh, that's what it actually is. I thought I was doing it, but I really wasn't.
Was there a period where you thought to yourself, I am ready? Because relatively early you hit Broadway. And I'm curious,
Hmm.
when you get that belief, maybe belief in yourself or enough positive reaction from others around you that says, I can go and take that challenge. I can go there.
Well, I was very fortunate. I went to college and did 4 years in a BFA program studying musical theater. And so I felt like I had the tools. I
Yeah.
went to Ithaca College. And I felt like I had the tools, and people around me were telling me I did. Now, I was still getting rejection all the time because that's basically most of your careers doing auditions and getting told no. So that was not fun. But basically, when my opportunity came, it was for something that I didn't even think that I was right for, which was a show called Rock of Ages on Broadway. It was like 80s rock music, and I was a classically trained tenor. Um, and so, but I could do it. Like I faked it till I made it. And I think that was a big lesson for me, was just to kind of do everything and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And because it was something that I had no clue that I was able to do, I was able to be free of any sort of expectations of what it should be, and just allowed myself to follow just follow where the world was taking me.
Yeah. And it took you to Broadway. I'm curious, first time you step out on the Broadway stage in a performance for an actor,
Hmm.
for someone who's spent years studying this, is there the thrill I want there to be, or is it just you're going out and doing your job?
Oh, there's the thrill.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean it was insane. I had like 2 days, maybe even less than that notice. And it was for the lead in the show. I was a swing in Rock of Ages. So I didn't go on stage. I was an understudy. I didn't go on stage for the first 2 months of the production. And finally, the lead calls out, and that was my first time to step on stage. And what was crazy is that nobody in the cast, except for maybe the other understudies, even knew what my voice sounded like, as a singer. And so not only was I going out to an audience that was expecting, this big star and not getting him, um, I sort of was unveiling this thing to the world and to my colleagues. And it was I was ready for it. Like I don't know why. I never really called myself much of a confident person, but I just knew that I had something to give, and it was pretty thrilling. And just every time I'd step off the stage, people were like, "Whoa, I didn't know you could do that." I was like, well, I did get hired.
Yeah.
Um,
Somebody knew.
so yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was the realization of a dream. I mean, I think any time that happens, if you don't feel anything, then you might need to seek some uh, counseling.
Yeah. You're in Newsies, which takes off in a
Mm.
way I don't think anyone could have expected it to have the attention, the following, the fans, the cultural impact it had. How do you navigate that?
I knew.
Yeah, you did?
But well, I was obsessed with Newsies when I was a kid. It was like a movie that came out in the early 90s. And I wore out the VHS tape. So like I was like, I know there's something here. And I knew that my generation had this sort of really love for it as a sort of a cult classic. And so I knew that it was possible. And as soon as we started doing it and putting it together, I could tell there was a different energy and something that was really special about it. And we didn't realize it was gonna have the chance to do that because when we had initially made it, we did it out of town at Paper Mill Playhouse in Jersey,
Hmm.
and then it was supposed to be licensed to go on tour, to go on the road. And and so even though we knew we had something special, we were like, well, this is gonna be it, unless we end up going on the road with it, which at least for me at that point in my career was not what I was looking to do. And and then they were like, you know what, maybe we'll give Broadway a shot. And well, that.
Yeah. You had one of the rare treats of getting to capture your performance on film, video, whatever, recording of it so people can see it. How is that for you?
Yeah. Well, it was 4 years after I left the
Right.
show. So I was God, I was like 30 at that point playing a 17-year-old. But it was great. I mean, it all came back to me. I had like 4 days of rehearsal, and a few of us from the original cast went to LA and we joined the tour cast, which was sort of just finishing up their run. And so it's mostly the tour cast, but then most of the leads were, people that came in from the original cast or something like that. And so it was a bit of a reunion, but it was also this crazy review super fast, but it was all still in my body. And it was kind of amazing. We shot it over a few days, and then we had one live performance at the very end, which somehow we got through, even though we hadn't run the show from top to bottom once. And it was a great way to send it off. And we didn't really think too much of it at that time. We're like, oh, we're gonna film it. And this was before Disney Plus was a thing.
Hmm.
And we were like, okay, we're just gonna be available to buy on Amazon or on DVD or something like that. And what's been crazy is that since it's so easily accessible and it's such a popular show for schools and theater companies to do around the world, the first thing they do is go watch this film to sort of see what it's all about. And so this new generation of theater kids um, are growing up on this production, and it's keeping me
Yeah.
relevant.
It's still out there. When I was a kid, I grew up in upstate New York, and we had an opportunity to go down to New York City. And I don't know why, I was a strange kid. I loved the TV show Guiding Light, the soap opera. And we got to go to the
Hmm.
set of Guiding Light. And there was an actress on the show, Lisa Brown, who played Nola. And the day we were there watching them tape the soap opera, she kept tap dancing up and down the hallways because she was going to go into 42nd Street. And I thought, there is no way you can do a TV show and be on Broadway. You did that. That must be
Very
crazy.
short period of time.
But still, how do you find the energy, the time, the scheduling to make something like that work? And we're talking
Well,
about
it was
Smash, the
before.
TV show.
Yeah, I was in Newsies and Smash at the same time for about 2 months.
Ugh.
I was not a father. My wife was also in a show, so like I didn't like have to I didn't have to come home and like be accountable to anybody. So I didn't have a day off for like, I don't know, a month and a half, something
Ugh.
like 40 some odd days, because I was doing 8 shows a week, and then during the day I was shooting Smash, and I missed a lot of shows actually because um, they brought in uh, replacement for when I was unable to come. That was Corey Cott, who then became his own megastar. And so yeah, it was wild. It was like a weird fever dream, but I was having the time of my life, and I was still in my 20s. Like I had so much energy, I didn't get any sleep, and it was totally fine. And I was just living my best life. If that opportunity presented to me now at the age of 40 with a 6-year-old kid and a house out in Jersey, like I would be like, pick one. I
Yeah.
can't do it all. Can't do double duty anymore.
Is it hard to adjust your presentational style in acting when you move between mediums? And when you're doing it two different ways in the same day, does that ever play with you? Or is it enough of the character is who the character is so it brings the certain amount of energy to it?
Well, I was lucky in that regard because Smash was a musical television show, so it was a little bit over the top as it was, and so it was a nice sort of transition for me to like be able to learn the new medium while bringing the old medium sort of with me and
Yeah.
bringing the skills from that. Um, but yeah, I am not one for how different they are internally. It's really external, you know. It's about using more of your body and your voice as opposed to using your eyes and your um, subtle gestures. It's a matter of volume and it's a matter of movement. And
Yeah.
I think the rest of it, I mean, if it's good writing, I think the rest of it sort of falls into place. And you're still studying character, you still have stakes and objectives and tactics and all the other actory terms that I can't think of right now. Um, I don't think there's a big difference. It's really just in presentation. It's the same as if you were, talking to a group outside or having a conversation with someone that was right in front of you or on the phone with you. So it's like it's going to be you're still having the same emotional life. The delivery is different.
Yeah. Um, Before we run out of time, I do want to talk about, we hear these news stories all the time of the death of Broadway, the end of Broadway, it's over. I put little stake in it because I keep hearing the same story over and over again, and there's still Broadway. But I'm curious your take. I guess it was New Yorker or the New York Times just had a big article about that again. And I'm curious your thought on the state of a place like Broadway.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about Broadway, if I'm being honest with you. When I hear things like, oh, the highest grossing season in Broadway history, I'm like, oh, then why did 90% of the new shows close within 4 to 6 months?
Yeah.
I think it's become this weird thing, the things that make money are the plays or the star vehicles. So those are the more sure things, and that's what people are going to invest in. So you're going to see more of that, which is troublesome for musical theater because there's a lot less of that in musical theater, and musical theater takes a lot more risks generally. But we've seen a lot of jukebox musicals, which some have done really well, and some are good, and some are less good. But at the same time, I think the main sort of victim of this is original thoughtful work that unless you get a Tony, nobody's ever going to see.
Hmm.
And theater being more accessible to normal everyday human beings because it's become so expensive. And when the shows that recoup are charging 500 plus ticket prices and investors and producers are like, okay, well, that's what makes us back our money, all these shows are starting to follow suit and raise their prices until they start to not sell and then the prices dip down and by then it's too late and it's a lose-lose situation. So I don't know what the solution is. I'm not an economical minded person, but I see a lot of my friends struggling to get their pieces heard. And I do think there are a lot of people out there, a lot of decision makers that are still looking for great art and for something that is also entertaining. I think there's a little room for both.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's going anywhere, though. I mean, we survived a year and a half pandemic drought where nothing happened on Broadway and came back with a vengeance. So I think people are always going to be eager and hungry for that experience. And I just hope that it sort of normalizes a little bit more so that it's not just about the star vehicle and it's not just about the massive ticket prices.
Yeah. I think about like Little Shop of Horrors starting off Broadway,
Mm.
moving its way up and coming to become the show so many people know. And I think, well, what's that path for a show today? But then something like an Oh Mary comes and has that moment too. But I just feel and worry that there's a
Yeah.
lot that aren't getting that fair shake.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I knew the economics behind Omeri because I would make everybody copy it. But but Little Shop was only super popular because it became a cult classic because of the movie,
Hmm.
and so it's there are so many different paths to get there, um but I do think it's become a little bit more troublesome and problematic. And it's really about keeping the right decision makers, in power and also in check, and hopefully letting art and the sort of experience, the human experience of theater lead the way.
Well, I'm happy with the path you've taken from Corpus Christi to Broadway, and then
Yeah,
even back to Houston for the gala at Tuts. Thank you so
yeah,
much, Jeremy.
I'm excited.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for talking with us, and I'll see you in
Yeah.
Houston.
I'll see you then.